Welcome to Money and Me, where we look at the financial life stories of some of the most prominent people in the country. My guest today is the co-founder of Crowdcube, the world's largest crowdfunding platform, and he's been nominated as one of the 500 most influential people in the country and was named by the Sunday Times as one of the top 100 movers and shakers in the world of entrepreneurs. His name is Luke Lang. Luke, welcome to Money and Me.
Pleased to meet you.
Okay, well, you're just taking you back a little bit to your childhood growing up before you got into business. I think your father was a carpenter and a builder, and seems like quite an entrepreneurial family because you and several of your siblings have ended up with your own business.
Yeah, I'm not sure either my mum or my dad would have ever considered themselves entrepreneurs or saw themselves as entrepreneurs, but looking back in hindsight, they definitely displayed entrepreneurial traits, you know, that drive, determination, bravery, you know, looking for opportunities. You know, my dad was a carpenter, but he started several successful businesses. My mum worked in education, but was very much a pioneer of vocational learning and apprenticeships. In, you know, at a time when apprenticeships were at their lowest level in the sort of late 80s, early 90s. And really drove a sort of a revolution in and around Devon and made that into a thing that ended up getting folded into the local college. So yeah, I don't think they would ever consider themselves as entrepreneurial, but it certainly rubbed off. Yeah, my eldest brother Mark saw the opportunity in the internet and the opportunities with the dial-up and broadband internet was coming. So he set up a company that I worked for. That's where I was really blooded in the world of entrepreneurialism and startup culture. My sister and her husband run a successful housing company, and my other brother is an engineer, and myself at Crowdcube. So yeah, there's very much an entrepreneurial gene in the family for sure.
So you joined your brother's business, and was it a case of you know, learning your trade there before deciding to go out on your own with your own company?
Yeah, very much. Like, I was fortunate. Mark started Eclipse Internet around when dial-up was just starting, and really I joined just as we were riding the wave of kind of broadband penetration into the mainstream, and it was a really exciting place to work. You know, it was a really innovative, lots of product development. It was fast-paced. It was very competitive. So there were lots of synergies between Eclipse Internet and my company Crowdcube. And I took a lot of learning from that and brought that across to my company as well.
I mean, to be fair, from my own experience, learning's one thing, but I think until you've done it, nothing prepares you for the culture shock of actually going out on your own, you know, and being in business for yourself and you know, having to make all the decisions and having to do everything and having, wearing so many hats. I mean, how did you find that transition?
Yeah, well, I was lucky enough, fortunate enough to have a partner in Darren. So we co-founded the company back in 2010. And I think that helps hugely. You know, you've got a sounding board. You know, you share the successes and celebrate the successes, but also you share the burden and the stress and the strain as well. And I think you need to be a particular type of person. Like, entrepreneurs are brave, they're courageous, they're determined. And I think those traits, you know, if you don't have those traits, it's very difficult to succeed. Certainly in the early stages of starting a business, where those characteristics are really important.
And also, I think if you look at timing, because in a sense, you know, you started Crowdcube at a time when we were just coming out of the worst financial crisis since the 1920s. So you might have thought that's not ideal timing. Absolutely,
yeah. And most people that I met said exactly that. Yeah, we started thinking about Crowdcube back in 2007, 2008, right around the time that the economic crash was happening, and we launched in 2011. And a lot of people that I spoke to were sort of, yeah, this is insane. Like, companies, well-known companies on the high street are going bust, let alone businesses, you know, that you hadn't heard of. So the idea that entrepreneurs would put their business plan onto our website and then invite investors to back and support that was an alien concept. People were very guarded in those early days. Like, I don't want to share my business plan because my competitors will be able to steal what I do. And equally on the other side, you know, you were seeing investors there Investments were depreciating. There's the worst economic crash since the 1920s. So the very notion that they would be backing and investing in high-risk startup early-stage businesses was also quite alien to a lot of people. But we firmly believed in what we were doing. We saw certainly Kickstarter in the US and the notion and the principles behind crowdfunding were really taking hold, and there was proof of concept there. And for us, equity crowdfunding was just an extension of reward-based crowdfunding. You're not backing a business or a person or a product and getting a T-shirt. You're backing it and getting an equity stake in that business. So you're owning a piece of it. And for us, and still today, that is very much an evolutionary step in crowdfunding.
Well, I'd almost go further. I'd say you've been at the kind of epicenter of what I could only call an entrepreneurial revolution, because if I go back perhaps even just a generation, I don't think Brits were that entrepreneurial. So what do you think has changed in the last 10 years?
I don't know. We're allegedly a nation of shopkeepers, so I think there was always an entrepreneurial gene within the British public. I guess we helped to fuel that entrepreneurship. And specifically, the businesses that we help to fund, they're very ambitious, they're bright, they're determined. They're earlier stage, increasingly later stage actually. A lot of the companies are raising in excess of £5 million on the site now. So we are very much helping to fuel that generation. Like in 2017, 1 in 4 entrepreneurs in the UK that raised equity finance did it on a crowdfunding platform.
Really?
And there was research by Ernst & Young just before Christmas that said entrepreneurs' second preference was, after venture capital investment, was crowdfunding. We actually outranked bank finance for the first time.
And what I think is interesting, there are two sides to this story. There are the entrepreneurs themselves who are driven to set up a business and take all those risks that we've talked about. But then there's all these people that are willing to invest in them, and because you can't have one without the other.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I'm most proud of. We've democratized investment. We've made investing that prior to Crowdcube was restricted to the wealthy and the well-connected. We've made it accessible to ordinary, everyday people who can back and invest in a business from as little as £10. Happily, they invest a lot more than that. We've had individuals invest up to £1 million on the platform. The average investment is around about £1,500 to £2,000. So there's significant sums of money. And people are building portfolios as well. One of the things that we stress is we don't shy away from the fact that investing in early stage businesses is high risk. And we make no bones about that, but we're very clear about the notion that you should be thinking about diversifying. You should be thinking about building a portfolio in the same way that you would build a portfolio of stocks and shares, ISA, build up your pension. Equity investment is kind of your interesting, exciting part of your portfolio that maybe only takes up 10 to 15% of your net investable assets, but maybe it's the stuff that's a bit more exciting, and you get a bit more and you're allowed to unleash some of your passions, and you get a sense of some of the impact that you're making with your investment, whether it be job creation in a local area, whether it be economic impact, whether it be environmental or social impact.
Okay, well, I think that's an important point that you talk about there, because although it's now obviously very easy to make the investments on a platform like that, you're actually starting a fairly long journey, because most of these companies are going to take several years to grow to the point where you might get an exit, and people, I think, have to be very cognizant of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's one of the risks. They are long-term investments. You're investing early. The upsides are great. If that business goes on to become a unicorn, and we're very privileged to have had the likes of Monzo, the Challenger Bank, Revolut, and Brewdog, the craft brewer, have all raised on our platform and have gone on to become billion-dollar-plus companies. Not all of them will. Lots of them won't be as successful as that. Many will fail. But it's typically a long-term play. You're investing 5 to 10 years, typically, before you'd get a return.
And I guess the answer is that you have to become a sort of a miniature venture capitalist and have a little portfolio of 7, 8, 9, 10 companies. That
absolutely. We've got people with portfolios in the hundreds of businesses.
Yeah.
You know, typically it's around sort of 5 to 10, but that's growing all of the time. You know, the repeat investment rate is high. So that message is certainly sinking in, that you don't just invest in one business. You know, you look to spread that money around and spread that risk around, and the potential that you get a return.
Yeah, okay. So what I'd like to do after the break is talk a little bit about, you know, in a bit more detail, some of those success stories as to how they've grown since being on the platform. For now, Luke Lang, thank you very much. Do join us again in just a few moments. Welcome back. Before the break, we learned about how you need to spread your risk by investing in more than one company on the Crowdcube platform. But let's talk now about one of the sectors that's really benefited from this sort of crowdfunding, and that's financial technology, or fintech. So, Luke, if we go back to childhood days, were you taught sort of disciplines of saving and investing and financial literacy by your parents?
I think one of the things that really stands out for me in my childhood was getting a bank account for the first time was a big deal. Yeah. And I got a bank account with NatWest, and I was one of that generation that saved up and got the NatWest pigs, and I was very much driven and focused on saving that £100 so I could get the full collection. Yeah. Even though I think this is hotly disputed, and the 5 pigs still at my father's house. My sister still contests who actually owns all five pigs, so I'm not quite sure how that's going to pan out. But I certainly think that when you talk about fintech, one of the things that I see is how it's taking a very kind of simplistic model and digitizing that and teaching people about financial planning, about saving, and about financial inclusion as well. You're right. Fintech has benefited hugely, more than any other sector, from crowdfunding, from equity finance. You know, we've had businesses like the challenger bank Monzo. You know, just a few months ago, they raised £20 million through crowdfunding, working with us. We've had Revolut, another unicorn business. Companies like GoHenry, which is all about credit cards for kids and teaching children financial literacy and how to manage their money, and also giving parents the opportunity to be able to track and understand how they're spending their money and when they're spending it, and linking it to their chores and to things like that, which I remember as a child growing up. You know, money was very much valued. We were taught the value of money, and we weren't just given it. You know, I had to work for it. You know, a family of 6, there were plenty of school shirts to iron, and after that there were plenty of cars to wash on the drive to earn my pocket money. Companies like GoHenry are digitizing that. They're bringing it into the 21st century. Chip is another great example of a company that, using AI, artificial intelligence, monitors your current account, and then works out how you can save money without ever really noticing that you are. Yeah. So there are lots of businesses that are, I think, that have a real deep sense of purpose, and they're making a difference, whether it be through changing people's behaviour, increasing and improving financial literacy, or improving inclusion. And I think they see the benefit of crowdfunding. They see, my view is that the new breed of financial services technologies company understand that there is a lot of discontent and dissatisfaction with traditional banks and finance. And they understand that using crowdfunding and enabling their customers and their community to invest and back them using crowdfunding is a way of differentiating themselves. It's a way of saying we're different. We're not like the old guard. We want you to be involved. We want you to be on this journey with us and to create a new financial services sector that everyone can be proud of. Well, certainly, if ever a sector deserved disruption, I think it's the high street bank. So I would say amen to all of that, because, and also I think what we can do there is we're actually using something very close to younger people's hearts, which is their phones and the technology, to achieve something that the core education system has singularly failed to achieve, which is some degree of financial literacy. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I would go one step further. I think financial literacy should be on the curriculum. You know, we should be teaching it from a very early age. There's evidence to suggest that you learn your your financial habits, whether saving or spending, very, very early on in your life. Yeah. So I think teaching people at a young age would be hugely beneficial for the country. And finances, whether you're in debt or whether you're able to save, is linked to mental health as well. So there's huge benefits, not just beyond financial services, but for the NHS. And that if you can get people managing their finances better, it makes you feel better. It makes you mean that you're less likely to suffer from mental illness. So I think these companies are trying to solve some of those challenges, trying to help people manage their finances much better.
Okay, so moving away from crowdfunding for a moment, do you have time to invest in other things? Are there any other areas that you actually invest in personally outside the core business?
In terms of financial investments, so I mean, I'm probably typical of a lot of entrepreneurs where you're focused so intently on the business and growing it that you maybe sacrifice your own personal financial planning. So I've got a pension, but it's pretty pitiful. Trying to sort that out now. I have started doing some ISAs. I use Nutmeg for my ISAs, and another fintech business that's made huge growth in the last 5 years. So trying to maximise those ISA, those tax allowances that you get there, and of course the investments that I do through Crowdcube as well.
Okay, and away from the business and investing world, you're quite into your fitness. I think you did something rather special for your 40th birthday last year.
Yeah, I did. So I did a leg of the Tour de France. So out of Lake Annecy, over 4 mountains, 4,000 meters of climbing, over 100 miles or so. So yeah, I love being on my bike. When I'm not at work, and spending time with my partner and my children, I love nothing more than being on the bike and kind of flying up and down mountains.
Okay, and the odd triathlon as well, I think.
Yeah. So I pushed myself a little bit further and taught myself to swim and forced myself to run. Those are the 2 bits really that sandwich the cycling bit that I kind of endure. But I like the challenge. I like the setting myself targets and goals and stretching myself. So cycling and triathlons, and I did a half Ironman a few years ago, which was probably one of my greater achievements on a bike.
Now, if you let's assume we move into a parallel universe here, and you decide to have a political career. We're obviously going through the whole kind of Brexit thing at the moment. What would you do if you were running the country to try and make things better from a business and an entrepreneur and an investing perspective?
I think there are a lot of great tax incentives out there, and a lot of great initiatives and a lot of great policies that successive governments have put in place. Whether it's I remember the privatisation of BT. I remember my dad buying me shares on my behalf, and as a child in the 80s, I used to religiously look at the paper every day and track those shares. I don't know that I quite knew what that meant. So I think there have been a number of initiatives over the year. I feel like we need to educate people better, and that needs to start much earlier on. So I think it needs to form part of the curriculum much earlier on. And I think there's more that the government can do to stimulate startup early stage businesses. Like I said earlier, traditionally we were a nation of shopkeepers. I think we're a nation of entrepreneurs as well. So the more that we can do to nurture that and nurture particular sectors as well. We've spoken about financial services and fintech. We genuinely lead the world on some of these things. And I think the government could do more to shine a spotlight on that.
And what do you hear about? You talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, obviously. What do you hear are some of their challenges that maybe the politicians could help with?
Yeah, I think hiring and recruitment and talent is always a big challenge for businesses, particularly tech businesses, whether you're a fintech or whether you're educational technology or it's agricultural technology or clean tech. Getting access to that talent to be able to build the engineering talent to be able to build that technology is quite tough, and keeping hold of it can be quite tough. And sometimes you have big companies like Google that come in and put their European headquarters in the centre of London at King's Cross, and everyone thinks that's an amazing thing, and it is, and it's something we should be proud of, but that does suck talent from those startup early stage businesses of people that want to go and work at Google, for instance. So it's about striking the right balance there.
Okay. And what are the characteristics that you see of the people that seem to be the most successful as entrepreneurs? Well, you see so many of them. What are the top 2 or 3 things that you think you've got to have if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur?
Well, first and foremost, you need to have a great idea, a good product, good service. You need to have a clearly identifiable market and an opportunity. I think clarity around I see a trend towards businesses being successful at raising funds, not just successful at raising finance, but being successful more generally, is having a real clear purpose to what they are. Like Brewdog is not just a brewery, they're on a mission to make craft brewery amazing. Monzo is not just another bank, they're on a mission to have a community created bank and to challenge the status quo. So I think businesses with a clear purpose and vision and mission of what they want to do and solving real problems, I think people identify with those problems and that makes them successful. For the entrepreneurs themselves, it's a bit cliche, but that kind of drive, determination, that visionary, really strong leadership, and I think all entrepreneurs are brave. That you need to have courage because you take a lot of risks, and I think sometimes people are afraid of failing, and I kind of view failure as just stepping stones on the way to finding the right answer and to success. So you kind of need to embrace that fear of failure or making mistakes.
Okay. And finally, what's next for Crowdcube? Where do you want to? You've got to the point now where you're probably the biggest platform of your type in the world. Where do you want to go with it next?
Yeah, so there's still a lot to do in the UK. As I said, 1 in 4 entrepreneurs that raise equity finance did it through crowdfunding. But I think there's still a huge amount of growth there. We've seen growth in the regions. I kind of think crowdfunding was pioneered in London, and now as it's maturing, it's really starting to get out into the region, and we're seeing more companies from around the British Isles raising finance on Crowdcube and attracting more investors from the region as well. So growing that for sure. We've also seen growth from Europe as well. So we've got offices in Barcelona in Spain. And we've seen growth in European businesses looking to raise finance on our platform. So certainly, consolidating our position in the UK and growing it, but also further expansion in Europe and beyond.
And is there any potential scope for a bit of a Coles to Newcastle story? But would you be tempted to go into the American market?
So we've got a relationship with the leading crowdfunding platform in the US. So we've got a strategic partnership with them that enables us to put some of our businesses to raise finance in the US and the US firms to raise finance over here. So that's a really good way of us starting to really understand that market and give our investors and our entrepreneurs exposure to it as well.
And I guess from what I'm seeing, some of the most exciting kind of emerging economies now are over in Asia. Have you got any plans to go east as well?
Not right now, no. I think we've got our plate full with the UK, Europe and the US, but it's certainly something that we would explore. There's the Indian and Chinese market, huge entrepreneurial scenes over there, so there's certainly opportunity.
So if anyone's watching us that's thinking, is now the time for me to get involved in investing in startups, what would your response to that be?
I would say go online, do your research, look at the platforms that are out there, look at the investments that are out there. You don't need to rush in. You can invest from as little as £10, so you can dip your toe in to begin with and then build from there. And certainly, if you're looking at making an investment, do your due diligence, look into the business, read the forums, try and understand the market, the opportunity, and the people behind the company, and try and make a really informed decision.
Brilliant. Okay, Luke Lang, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Join us again next week on Money and Me for another financial life story from one of our prominent citizens.